Hi, it's Paddy Hirsch at Marketplace, here to talk about Repo 105. By now, a lot of people know what Repo 105 is. In principle, it's this little piece of accounting shenanigans that Lehman Brothers got involved in before it went bankrupt. But we've been trying to work out exactly how Repo 105 worked. So here's my understanding of it. I'm sure if I'm missing a few things, you guys will let me know, please do. So essentially, Repo 105 is based around a repurchase agreement. Standard thing, investment banks use them all the time to get the money that they need to operate. Investment banks tend not to have large amounts of money sitting around, so they've got to get the money that they need to do business, to pay salaries and all the rest of it, from somewhere else. And the way that they do that, or one of the ways, is through repurchase agreements. So let me show you how that works. There's a couple of counterparties. Here's Tim. Tim needs to borrow $100, say, for 24 hours. So he goes to his buddy Joe, and here's Joe. Got a big red nose today, he's a bit sick. And Joe says, okay, I'll lend you $100, but I need $100 in collateral, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say you're gonna buy $100 worth of stuff from you. So Tim looks around and he finds his storied AC/DC collection, which he thinks is worth $100. So essentially, in terms of the contract, Joe buys $100 worth of AC/DC records from Tim for $100, on the proviso that 24 hours later, Tim is going to come back and buy back to repurchase that $100 worth of records, and that the $100 will then go back into Joe's pocket, plus a little fee for actually arranging that. Now, in the cases of the banks, okay, we're talking about large amounts of money here, and we're not talking about AC/DC records, of course, we're talking about securities. So they put up securities, bonds, mortgage-backed securities, maybe treasury securities, whatever they may be, but securities are what are used as opposed to AC/DC records. And in a transaction like this, in a repo transaction like this, it appears more as a loan than anything else. So as far as Joe's concerned, he is lending $100 because he knows that Tim's going to be coming back to buy that $100 worth of collateral back again. As far as Tim is concerned also, he is also getting a $100 loan because he's got this agreement that he's going to go back and repurchase those securities. So essentially, it's essentially a loan, even though it looks like a sale, okay? So what happened in the case of Lehman Brothers and this Repo 105 thing? Well, okay, essentially here we've got this boy at Lehman, okay, who needs to borrow vast amounts of money in order to operate. And so he goes to, let's call it the Bank of Joe, all right? And he says, let's just say for argument, let's take it $100. Okay, so he wants to borrow $100. Joe says, all right, well, I obviously need $100 worth of collateral. So Lehman Brothers comes up with the $100 worth of securities, whatever those securities might be. Again, Bank of Joe regards this as a loan, and under these circumstances, Lehman Brothers also books it as a loan. So when you look at Lehman's books, you can see that these securities are going to be coming back at some point. So you know that those assets have just been lent out and they're going to be coming back again. All right, but Lehman Brothers very cleverly looked into the accounting standards and saw that the accounting standards only require you to book these securities or this repo transaction, okay, as coming back if the securities are worth between 98 cents and 102 cents on the dollar. Okay, so what it did is it supplied, instead of supplying $100 worth of securities as collateral, it supplied $105. It over-collateralized the deal. So Joe thinks, okay, I've lent you $100. You're giving me $105 worth of collateral. That's okay with me. If all goes wrong, I've got $105 worth of collateral here. And I'm still regarding it as a loan because you're going to be coming back and it's a repurchase agreement. You're going to be repurchasing from me in however many days' time. Now, of course, in our eyes, we look at this and we say this is a loan. But because of the accounting standards rules, Lehman was able to, or interpreted them as saying it could book this not as a loan, but as a sale. Okay, so if it booked this as a sale, it means that these assets have disappeared. They're not coming back. So a snapshot of the balance sheet at this point shows all of these securities have disappeared. And if you load this 105 transaction, this Repo 105 transaction, up with billions of dollars of assets, at one fell swoop, those assets have disappeared, even though the repurchase agreement still exists, and even though Lehman Brothers is still going to be going back to the Bank of Joe and buying those securities back. And that is essentially how Lehman Brothers managed to disguise or to disappear a bunch of those assets, large numbers of its assets off its balance sheet, and therefore, improve its profile to anybody who was looking at it. So why did it want to do that? Well, the main reason was because it wanted its counterparties, people like the Bank of Joe, to keep on doing business with it, okay, because it had a leverage problem. People thought it was weighed down with too much debt. People were also worried about the quality of the assets that it was holding. Of course, if you're worried about a counterparty, you're not going to want to lend money to a guy who might not be able to pay it back, are you? So Lehman Brothers was worried about the way, or the perception that people had of it, so it wanted to make sure that its balance sheet was in as good a shape as possible. And that's why it found out about this rule, and that's why it designed this Repo 105 transaction as a way of shifting this stuff off, making itself look good. Of course, in the end, what happened was everybody realized what a state Lehman Brothers was in. There was a liquidity crisis. People refused to do business with the bank. Suddenly it had no money to operate, and that left Dick Fuld and all of his boys and girls, of course, very badly needing a drink.